That's right. Norma Wallace and Chris Wiltz wrote a book about that called The Last Madam. That's where I first
Yep.
saw you. They did a walkthrough through the house, and you were there because I went there with Chris because Chris is my daughter's grandmother.
Yes. Yep.
So
I remember that. That was back in, I think, 2012, I think.
that's right. So big shout out to Chris Wiltz for writing The Last Madam. Because
Yes. And in fact, if it wasn't for her book, we wouldn't even be having this conversation because it was that book that I read. And after I finished reading it, I became fascinated by Norma Wallace. And that is the book that brought me down to New Orleans for the very first time.
what was it in the book that stuck out to you the most that inspired you to be like, I got to write these tunes?
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting, right? Because I read that book back in 2010. So this has been going on in my life for quite some time. And I think about it a lot. I think, what is it about this story and my experience with it that has, captivated my attention for, gosh, a decade? And it's evolved over the years, but I think initially it was just that I had never been to New Orleans and the French Quarter. And so the way that Chris writes about it, and obviously Norma's story in and of herself, is just so fascinating and something that I had never experienced growing up on a farm in rural Minnesota. And so I think first it's just that, this whole idea of getting a glimpse of what New Orleans is.
And it was a good way to see it because, you have to kind of make your own way in this city. And Norma Wallace certainly did that in big, huge strokes.
Absolutely. And then exactly. And as I've gotten older and, matured and come more into myself, it really is, I just became captivated by her grit and her confidence